Hello, everyone. Happy good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Chris Richardson, President and General Counsel for BDV Solutions. I'm really happy to be here today. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to answer some of your questions, obviously, but I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing on the government relations side to help with retrogression and generally everything going on in immigration in the world. As you can all imagine, it's a very interesting time and a hard time for a lot of the immigrant community, just for different and various reasons. But we don't want to lose sight of the fact that so many of our clients are having to wait a very long time due to retrogression and due to government delays. And so on our end, as a company, we really have been focused on two things. One, working with members of Congress and pushing member of Congress to either adopt something called the Dignity Act, which would increase the number of visas that are available for EB3 unskilled. Also, just pushing in general for some kind of immigration reform that would impact or help with retrogression. But obviously, with all the things going on, other parts of the government, those conversations have been going slow. But now that Congress is back in session and working, talks have been picking up, and our team has been leading and helping push those talks to try to find a solution around retrogression. And relatedly, we've also been working on working with both DOL and Department of Homeland Security and the State Department. Our team has been working with all three so that they use up all the numbers. In past years, I think a lot of you know, they actually haven't used up all the EB3 unskilled numbers. And so in the last few years, they have. And that's largely because we've been pushing our clients. Our clients have been pushing us, and we've been pushing members of Congress and also those three departments to really make sure that that's something that we can do. It's really important that, it's one thing to be that there's retrogression. It's another when, they don't use up all the numbers. Like if all 10,000 isn't used, then that's a problem. Last year, we saw those numbers were used up by September, which was a positive. That means that we were able to get a significant number of green cards approved. We want to make sure that those numbers continue, especially in light of a lot of the government delays. And even though even though the government shutdown didn't impact visa issuances officially, unofficially, it did slow things down a little bit. And so we really want to make sure that the government across the board is working to issue as many visas as possible to get to that 10,000. That's super, super important. And so those are some of the things. So we do have a government relations team. We have 3 or 4 people. They work in DC, not only on trying to move policy on retrogression and move policy on backlogs, but also on individual cases too. And so we do a lot to try to fight for our clients who are current, because obviously if we get our current clients their visas, then that frees up more space for even more clients. And so whether it's mandamus lawsuits, congressional requests, direct contact with USCIS or the State Department, we really do try to fight for our clients, even at that level. And we've committed a significant amount of resources to try to fight and help our clients across the board. And so with us, we try not to, we never give up on our clients. We had somebody today who got their green card after almost 7.5, 8 years, and they had every delay imaginable, admin processing, this delay with the State Department, that delay with the State Department. I reached out to the State Department personally on that person's behalf. I think a lot of law firms and other consulting groups, they would quit, they would give up, say, well, this is something that, you can't do, but that's not what we do as a business. I really do try to think about different ways that we can help our clients. And so if your case is current, and I said this at our last Ask Me Anything, but if your case is current and, it's been unreasonably delayed, reach out to me, reach out to our team. because I do want to always be committed to helping our clients in any way that we possibly can. Obviously, I can't fix retrogression. I wish I could. I'm trying. We're trying to fix retrogression, but the little things that I can do and we can do, we 100% will do for our clients. And that's why we're here. And that's why we try very, very hard to move the needle, whether individually or across policies. And we were able to, example, move some policy with DOL. DOL recently set up an office. DOL actually started issuing during the shutdown in large part because of what we do. And so, we are able to move the needle ever so slightly. But I do think that, there will be a time when, all of our investments will pay off. There will be a solution for something like retrogression. And so those who've signed up now, those are the ones that are going to benefit the most from that. So I think that's positive. So let me see if there's some questions on here that I could potentially answer. Do you think BDV? Yes, we do provide relocation services for our clients. And one thing I always say about BDV is that BDV is like a marriage counselor, but even better than a marriage counselor, because we want to make sure that the relationship works, right? We want to make sure that you as the foreign national have a great relationship with your sponsor and vice versa, right? Like I want our sponsors to be happy with the people that they work with, but I also want the people to be happy with where they work. And so we have a whole team dedicated to client services and helping them with relocation services to the United States, helping them find schools, helping them get their driver's licenses, helping them sign up for Social Security. We really do try to provide a full service for our foreign nationals because we know that helps both the foreign nationals and the sponsors. And we recently set up English classes to help people who are waiting to become current and waiting to file their 485 or their NVC learn English as well, or improve their English. And so we really do try to help the whole client across the board and throughout the throughout the process. How soon will July 2022 be current? I don't know. Obviously, retrogression, we just saw some movement by a week or so, but usually, we don't know what kind of movement we're going to see until January or February. I think I've said this in past Ask Me Anythings, but generally for October, November, and December, the State Department likes to keep it steady because they want to know how many people have applied, how many people have not applied. They want to know kind of what to anticipate. So if we see any real movement, it'll probably be in February, March, April, around that time. If the State Department feels that they haven't issued enough, I could see them moving us forward quite a bit. And so my advice would be to stay tuned. I think by February, March, we'll kind of know where we're going to land 2022. Right now we're still in 2021, but my hope is that next early, hopefully move forward. And I'm hoping that people in 2022 will finally be able to, in 2026, have their stuff current so that they can be in a good place. And that's what we've been hearing, but we're going to wait and see on that. Let's see. Sir, I have a question of spouse and children fees. If there are questions about spousal and children fees and when to pay, that stuff is usually toward the end of the process, but definitely talk to our team, whether on the sales team or our operations team. They can clarify, but most of that payment stuff will be much later in the process. Someone asked about the J supplement to change employer. So sometimes if your case has been pending for a certain period of time, or if you've already filed the 485, or if your I-40 has been pending and approved after a certain period of time, you're allowed to change over the employers. And that's what the supplement J is for. But even if you're currently with an employer, sometimes you need to file that supplement J to confirm that to be true still. And so the supplement J is for that form for the adjustment of status folks. And it's something that we often ask the foreign nationals and the sponsors to sign. Now, the one thing I'll tell you is that if you work for one of our sponsors and then leave, um, it's going to be up to that sponsor whether they want to come take you back and then sign that supplement 485, right? So like, let's say that you get your EAD, you come to the US, you work for the sponsor, you decide after a year or 2 years, you know what, I'm going to go do something else. You may need that sponsor. And so that's why I tell people to be very careful. If you choose to leave after that year, you have to really think about like kind of why that is, and also will this employer be willing to take you back and also willing to sign, because not all employers will be willing to sign. Now, will you always need the employer to sign? Maybe not, but I think it's risky. And so I think that you really should think about your relationship with the sponsor as a long-term relationship. And even though you may only need to work a year, you still do need to think about, well, will I need to come back to this job at a later time? And especially if I'm about to be interviewed for my 485. So those are all things that that you need to be thinking about. Why are applications taking longer? Well, I think the DOL phase has kind of stabilized and that's shrunken a little bit. The prevailing wage has shrunken a little bit. But yeah, retrogression is still retrogression. And there's still a longer time for those applications to be approved. And the bottom line is that there are just more applicants. There are more people who are applying. And the State Department only has so many resources to commit to issuing all of those. And there's also only a small window of 10,000 from which they can issue. And so those are some of the reasons why you're seeing like this delay. But our company is doing everything that we can to hopefully get changes done and hopefully push not only for our individual clients, but also for a larger subset of clients too. Someone is asking about the current state of HWRA. That's the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act. Essentially, this bill would exempt people who work in healthcare from the caps, and it would also push for doctors and others to be able to move forward. I always see headlines about this bill. I wish this bill would pass, but I think right now with immigration, things are just really, really tough. And even though there's a giant need for healthcare workers, and I support this bill. Like I would support the bill. It's a bipartisan bill. I think that exempting healthcare workers is great because anybody that I can get out of the cap means there's more space for the rest of us, right? And so nurses are a huge part of EB3 skilled, which can take up some of the 10,000 from the EB3 unskilled. Therefore, and there's a lot of home health aides and other type of workers that take up the EB3 unskilled and EB3 skilled slots. And so if that healthcare worker bill were to pass, you take those numbers out, that leaves more room for everybody else. So that would significantly help with retrogression. And so that is something that our team is supportive of, and we've been pushing, but I think it's just going to take some time, especially now with Congress restarting. Let's see, if you apply as a Bangladeshi, how long will it take? The same amount of time as everybody. And really the whole world is pretty much the same except for India and China, which have a much longer wait. With sponsors, there's a question here about, someone's sponsor, who dropped out. Unfortunately, I can't guarantee anything, in life. We do have an account manager. We do work very closely with our sponsors. We do vet our sponsors significantly to make sure that they don't drop out. I'm happy to report that we've had much less clients impacted this year by sponsor dropouts than in previous years. But we do try to educate our clients. We look at their finances. We look at their books. We do try to push them to remain in this process because it's a long process, and they need to understand that they impact people's lives if they drop out or if they change. Now, there's some things that I can't control, that we can't control for. If a sponsor gets sick, if their company gets bought, there might be changes because of that stuff. But even then, we'll try to find different solutions, and we'll try to ask the sponsor to stay long enough that our people can get their I-140 approved and maybe port to another employer. We do work with our consular clients to try to port them to others as well. So there's no guarantee that, I can't guarantee that I can make a sponsor stay, right? Like if they get sick, have cancer, and they're dying, I can't, force them to remain in the process. But, I do say that we are working a lot closer with our sponsors now. We do a much better job of vetting our sponsors now. And we haven't seen the kind of dropout impact this year that we did in prior years. And just maintaining that relationship with the sponsors is really, really important. And that's something that all members of our team do together, because that is really, really important. Let's see, is AOS from F1 too hectic since you have to keep maintaining on the process? Yeah, so with adjustment of status, someone is asking about the fact that you have to maintain your status. That is correct. If you are trying to adjust from an F1, especially now, that makes it a little bit more difficult. And you do need to find different visa statuses to be able to maintain your status. And so moving from F1 to OPT STEM and or H1B or some other visa category, that is required and necessary in order to maintain status. But at BDV, if you had to go back home, we will switch you over to consular. And we are completely understanding of that. And that's something that we as a team, we work on those all the time. Again, on the filing dates and if the people in 2022 will be current in 2026, we're not going to know until January, February, March how fast that they plan on moving. The State Department really likes to wait the first 3 months to see what kind of issuances they're getting. If they feel like they may not meet their quota or might not meet the 10,000, they will speed it up by moving the bulletin forward. And so I think by February or March, we should see some movement, or at least an understanding if there will be a lot of movement in 2026 or not. The likelihood of that healthcare bill I was just talking about, I would say 20-30%, to be honest with you. Maybe even not that much, probably like 20%, 30%, probably 25% at most. Primarily because Congress really doesn't have the stomach or appetite to do any kind of major immigration reforms or even small immigration stuff or really anything at this point. I think there's so much distrust and issues among the political parties in DC right now that if they were going to pass some kind of immigration reform, it should have been this year, next year, because we have an election coming up and just different things moving. I just have a hard time believing that we're going to get anybody in Congress to be serious about immigration reform or changes. Let's see here. LCs, as a reminder, because of the government shutdown, if someone's asking about, LCs and that taking a little bit longer, because of the government shutdown, the Department of Labor was shut down and they stopped all issuances and processing because DOL just now started back in full, and they really shut down the week before the actual shutdown. So they really started shutting down late September and haven't really picked back up and probably won't pick back up until December. And so, yes, there has been a delay in the LCs being approved because of that. And so I think that that's always the risk or the problem with government shutdowns, is that you really do see that kind of thing happening. Someone's asking about the visa process and it being in limbo and how it's just taking like a long time. For some clients, it's going to take even longer, even if they are current than others, whether it's because of travel bans or because of other issues. And like I mentioned earlier, we had a client due to administrative processing issues and issues with the embassy. It took them 7 years to get their green card. But the thing is like I can't promise you the date it'll happen, but we do stand by our clients. We do try to fight for all of our clients to the extent we can, right? If there's a travel ban and there's no way to get a waiver, for example, from people from Afghanistan, for example, there isn't a lot we can do on that. We can advocate, we can push, we can ask the government to make changes, and we do. Not just us, but lots of people work, especially around Afghans and the travel bans. But until the government changes those policies, we're going to have to continue, unfortunately, waiting until some other administration comes along or this administration changes their minds. So travel bans, admin processing, things like that are really, really tough. So a question, is it possible to change positions from the same employer, like moving back of the house to front of the house? Yes, it is possible, but you should probably talk to our team members because every circumstance is going to be different, right? Like you don't want it to be that you move from like a dishwasher job to a tech job and then stay in that tech job, because that might be harder when it comes time to do your interview. But most employers are willing to work with you, and our company is willing to work with you as well to try to find a solution that is appropriately balanced for both sides. And I think that that's something that you really need to work through on an individual basis. I can't give you that advice here on Facebook, but I can tell you that that's something that we have to think about from an individual basis. Someone asked about the if your country's on the travel ban list. What I've been advising people is, one, as a company, we've been pushing, obviously, and hoping that the government will help people, to the extent that's possible, especially with exemptions, and a process to allow people in these other countries who are on the travel ban list. But if you have contacts or people, tell them to reach out to their congressman. There is a bill that's before Congress that would help people from Afghanistan, for example. If congressmen can pass that bill, that would be a great way to get some of these folks over. But short of that, we just have to wait. Someone's asking about President Trump recently announced his order on health issues or diseases. Now that order really hasn't been set in stone yet, so we don't know exactly what that actual rule is going to look like yet. And we don't know what will be in that actual regulation as of yet. A lot of that is going to be tied to the public charge rule or lack of rule when it comes out. But I think for now, the purpose of that presidential order is to give wide discretion to USCIS and the State Department to weed out people based on health. But how much they'll actually use it, it's hard to say. I don't think that it's going to be something that that it's not going to be like the first tool they go to in their quiver. I think they're going to have a lot of different tools, but think of that rule as something that actually can get something done for them, right? Where they think, well, you know what, I don't want to issue this, so I'm going to use diabetes as a real reason not to. But I don't envision them using that a lot once the actual rule comes out. But we don't actually know what the rule and the regs look like as of yet. But when we do, we'll have a better understanding. But my thinking is that it's just going to be one more thing that they can use, but only for those borderline cases that they may not want to issue. Let's see here. Someone's asking about the salaries, and do salaries. I think there's a couple of questions on here that asked about salaries and whether salaries change or not over the years. They can. I don't want to, commit or tell employers that they have to think about their salaries, but obviously our employers are always monitoring and thinking about how things will look in 4 or 5 years or 3 or 4 years, and they will correspond sometimes to match that. And so I would just say that that's something that the employers later on may look at, especially if the price or the payment hourly salary may be a little bit on the low side. And that's something we always talk to our employers about, to make sure that it's matching what the reality is of the situation. Um, so it's not necessarily set in stone, and it is something that we've looked at and worked on, but the salary is sometimes what it is, and we do try to work with our employers to raise them, but there's no guarantee that we can do that. Do I see any bill in Congress that could help EB3? I think the healthcare bill would actually be of help, because even though our jobs aren't healthcare, if you exempt or get the healthcare people out of EB3 unskilled, then that would free up a lot, because a significant portion of EB3 unskilled and EB3 skilled are taken up by nurses, home health aides, and others. And so I do think that you could see some help if either of those bills were to pass. I unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, but I do think that politically, the government just isn't really interested right now in any kind of immigration reform. Possible in 2027 after the election, and we are pushing for it on our end. But from everything that we're hearing and we're seeing, I just don't know how likely that is to happen. But I do think, though, that there will be some kind of reform, maybe not with this administration, maybe the next one, or maybe this one, if they feel like they've deported enough people and they think they've created the space to do so. I think that's possible. But right now, I think that both sides politically are kind of dug in on where they are. And I think that that's just something that we have to think about. So thanks everyone for this time. I unfortunately have to run. This is really enjoyable. I plan on being back and doing more of these. Please leave any other comments or questions that you have in the comments. Oh, someone did ask, what does BDV stand for? BDV stands for Britt Davis Bergnahl, who is the former founder of the company. So it was her initials. So Boy David Victor, Britt Davis Bergnahl. That's what it stands for. That is her name. Wonderful woman. All of us who work with her really miss her and appreciate all that she did to build the business and really help put EB3 Unskilled on the map. So if you're listening, Britt, thank you for all that you do. I do miss you a lot. Thanks, everybody. Please leave your questions. We'll try to get to them and answer them later on or as the day progresses. And definitely reach out to us if you're a prospective client and you want to learn more about EB3 Unskilled. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.